Welcome to another special edition of the Commissioner's Corner. I'm Jen Flowers, Commissioner of the WCHA, and so excited to be joined by these awesome faces on your screen. We've got another great conversation as part of our National Girls and Women's in Sports Day turned WCHA National Girls and Women's in Sports Week as we celebrate the amazing women who are part of the WCHA. As you see on your screen, 6 phenomenal women. Maura Kroll, 6th season as the head coach at the University of Minnesota Duluth, joined by her 2 assistants, Laura Bellamy, who's in her 6th season as well, and Ashley Brickelick, who's in her 3rd season. And we've got Nadine Muzzerall, head coach of the Ohio State University, 5th season as a head coach for the Buckeyes, longtime WCHA player, coach. Now she's a head coach in the league, joined by her assistants, Emily West, who's in her 2nd season, and Zoe Hickel, who's in her 1st season. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me. I'm really excited to have some conversation about a topic I know we're all pretty passionate about, and that's just women in sport and how we continue to celebrate and honor the work that we're all doing, and also encourage and advocate for more women to join us. So I want to start with this, and we'll kind of circle the room on this one. When you hear or when you think about celebrating National Girls and Women's in Sport Day, what does that mean to you? What kind of emotions or thoughts does that bring? Maura, let's start with you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's an important day to celebrate. I love that we've expanded into a week, and I love that the WCHA is taking the lead on this. It's a time to reflect back. I think we did a little research. The first day was 1987. So to think back to all the women and girls over the years that have helped get us all to this point. And, I guess it's a reminder that we still have a lot of work to do. So again, thanks for bringing it to the forefront, and it's a good day to celebrate.
It is a good day to celebrate. We're going to celebrate as much as we can. Nadine, what do you think? Similar comments, thoughts to Maura, or is there a different emotion that this day brings out?
For me, it's a little different. I'm a mom to a young girl who's 6 years old, Bella, and I just think of the opportunities that I can help create along with these fine women on this call to make those opportunities bigger for her and brighter for her future. I just think back when I started playing for Minnesota, it was the inaugural season in the 1997-98 year. So when you said long, I was like, it is long. And so I just think about being a part of the inaugural team at Minnesota, but also the inaugural conference, and how much it has come, and how many young women that we have developed in hockey and brought into the next part of their chapter of their life. And it has come a long way, thinking of the pioneers that we had here to get that going with Laura Haldersons and the Shannon Millers, and the opportunities that they have grown to get us to even a national tournament. So we are chipping away at it, and we still have some way to go, because I remember my first year, I think we scrimmaged against an older women's, now it's probably was my age when I look back, and like Sue Ring Jarvie and like all these people, like these pioneers that played in the 70s and the 80s and what they had to go through. So it's definitely come a long way from when I started, but like we say, we always want to excel and push forward.
Yeah, we want to leave it better than where we found it, right? So that means we still have some work to do. Zoe, I'm curious for you, as the newest to this group, what do you think this day means, or what do you hope we can share with others about this day and how far we've come?
Yeah, I think it's an incredible opportunity for all of us to be able to share the little things that we love. And similar to Muzz, I think having a strong family that's been involved with sports for a long time, my mother and sister, been able to share those years with them too. So yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this and learn from these ladies around me too.
Yeah, great point. I can tell you that when we had our last panel, the learning that was happening amongst them and myself was really, even though you all work together and you see each other on the recruiting trail in normal years and things like that, we still have the opportunity to learn a lot. So let's talk about the importance of having women on the bench in our sport. Laura, what do you think about that? Why do you think it's so important that there's women coaching in the sport of hockey?
Yeah, it's we were talking about this earlier, it's really sort of all I know since playing. I mean, in high school, I had a female coach. I had a woman head coach in college who I then coached with, and then now with Maura too. So there's probably, my mom probably wouldn't say that same thing, but that's been my experience. And I think it's just, we talk with our players, just being able to not only see women lead and what that looks like, but also just experience it, because ultimately, like when their hockey career ends, and obviously it's important within hockey too, but when they go and do other things, whatever their career path is, hopefully they're going to be leaders in their career. So they've sort of not only seen us do that and lead them, but they've experienced it too. And I just think in hockey in particular, women's hockey is very different from men's hockey. So the fact that we've, played at the same level that they have and now can coach them, I think is really valuable.
Emily, I'm curious your feedback on this one, because, you had a little bit of a different path maybe right away before you got into coaching. So maybe why did you get into coaching? And then why do you think it's so important to have a woman on the bench?
Yeah, absolutely. A little different background for me growing up, mainly led by male coaches. So a very male dominant environment. And I think to Laura's point, I always hear you can't be what you can't see. And I think that applies not only in sports, but in life, and just empowering these young female athletes to visibly see women in power, and not just in the ice rink, but outside in the business world. Leaders like Nadine and Diana, and powerful women that continue to strive outside of athletics. And my path was a little different. I worked for USA Hockey prior to this, and I was the only female on staff in the ADM group. So quite different, but I think there's always opportunities to learn. And that's something that I've strived for, is to learn and be a sponge and absorb everything and try to bring that to these young female athletes.
Ashley, I'm guessing your perspective is unique here as well, because you played at Duluth for Maura and now have, kind of switched and you're on the bench with her, and maybe similar ideas to how your student athletes are feeling, because you're not that far removed from it. So why do you think it's important that they have you around, have a chance to see and learn from you?
Yeah, I think my perspective as a younger coach is cool too, because through my experience at UMD playing and now coaching, it's always been female head coaches. So through my experience as a younger female coach, I've always been surrounded by female leaders, and I think it's starting to trend that way a little bit more, and it's exciting. And so for me now as a coach coaching our student athletes, our players, and seeing them in that environment on a day-to-day basis is so important. Like these guys are saying, just seeing females in leadership positions, just making it the norm, right? That's, I think, our goal at the end of the day. We want to make it the norm so that it doesn't have to be a second thought. That's just, that's, if they want to be a coach when they come through, they graduate and go on with their lives. That's something that they've seen and they've been exposed to, and they can do that, and they can believe that they can do that. So I think for me, it's awesome as a younger coach with the perspective of being surrounded by female leaders through my college experience, and now as a coach, it's starting to trend that way, and it's awesome to see.
Curious, maybe just show of hands. So when you all jump in drills with your players, how rewarding is it for you to be able to show them, number one, I did play and I can still play? And do you think it gives them maybe a different, if you're in the drill, do they compete differently? How about that? Do they want to show you up? I see lots of smiles, so I feel like that's a yes. Emily, take that one. What do you think? You think your student athletes appreciate that what you're talking about because you lived it? And then do they compete a little harder when you're in it?
I think I would like to say yes, that our student athletes respect us all because of what we've done, and also other coaches as well. And when it comes down to competing in drills, they keep me pretty humble. They're a little more agile than I am now and a lot smarter, but we compete in hair down showdown every week, and I try to at least get one in every time so they don't pick my stick up on purpose to out the coach. So it's fun. It's a good environment. And I think the paths that we all took as players and coaches. It reflects in our players and they respect all of us. So yes.
That's awesome. Hair down, showdown. Is that what you called it? Okay, I'm gonna
Yes.
remember that. Nadine, let's talk about, you mentioned Laura, you mentioned Shannon. Let's talk about, was there a woman who was instrumental in maybe encouraging you to get into coaching? And do you find yourself, do you have a mentor in the business that maybe is part of the reason why you're having the success that you're having?
I think if you asked Laura Halderson if I would have been a great role model for the future, she, at that time in 2002, she might have raised her eyebrows at you and had a side smirk that she's known to have. But I mean, you look at me and Courtney Kennedy coming from Minnesota, and we would tend to bend the rules a little bit, but here we are.
Shocked by that.
Yeah, shocking, right? But it's one of those things that I can tell the girls, don't go that way. It doesn't end well. Don't do this. It doesn't end well. So now I've lived and learned, right? And then, of course, I've also changed a lot when I became a mom. I can tell you that. But of course, the obvious answer for me is Laura Halderson. In terms of an inspiring woman in our field. And Laura took over a program, right? Laura started a program from nothing. And then because of her success, it was vast growing in the state of Minnesota, and created a conference from it. And so she started from nothing. And that's one of the reasons I chose Minnesota, is because I wanted to be a part of something special. I wanted to build something, pride of hanging banners and being able to have the opportunity to bring Bella and show what Mommy and all her friends were able to do. And there's history behind that. But Laura was an unbelievable coach. And I think beyond her years when she started this, I was thinking how old I always thought Laura was when I was a player, and she's a lot younger than I started here. So it's, again, perspective. But she was devoted and committed. And I think a lot of my work ethic towards this job comes from passion, but also of what I've been prone to. And sometimes I feel as women, we always feel like we have to work a lot harder to show that we can be the best. And so I think, yeah, Laura was it for me. She inspired me that I could do it, and I think sometimes as women, we struggle when we're going for a job interview. Oh, we have to check all 10 of the boxes to apply. Whereas men might be like, oh, I got 5 or 6 of those, I can go for this job. And so I think with the push from Laura telling me, a lot of the attributes I had to do it, because quite honestly, I wasn't certain if I would be able to do it. But I'd like to give a lot of credit to her for always believing in me. She's the type that still writes you birthday cards and then shows up at the games. And I remember when we made our first Frozen Four appearance in my second year, I was nervous. And she came in and she gave me a picture of me playing and just said, don't forget who you are and where you came from, and you can do this. And so it's a nice little pep talk before the game. So the best advice, she said, is just control your emotions, because they feed off of you. So very grateful for her.
Yeah, that sounds like you're obviously incredibly lucky to have someone like her in your corner. Laura, how about for you? I'm curious, you've been working with Maura for, her entire stint here at Duluth. Would you consider Maura to be that person maybe that helped you consider yourself staying in coaching, or was there someone before that, or a combination? And how do you balance that?
Yeah, well, my mom came first. And she, I was just talking to Brick about this. Our moms kind of had similar roles for us when we were younger, but she played hockey growing up. There's a local rink called Lower Chester in Duluth, and they fielded a girls team when she was, I think she was 8, and the age group to make a team was 8 to 18. So in order to have enough girls on her team, there was quite the age range. And so we were just recently talking about it, and she said, yeah, she would go there every day after school and wore her figure skates and played hockey. She didn't have girls, at least in her neighborhood, didn't wear hockey skates. So we kind of joke about that. But she went on she coached my brother's youth team. So softball for sure, I think it was a co-ed team, and then soccer. And I can picture her with the clipboard and the bag of soccer balls hopping in the car. And I don't think a lot of women my age would maybe say that. It's usually the dad. It still is the dad a lot, which is great. But to have seen my mom coach, and she didn't know anything about soccer, but she felt like she could still coach a youth soccer team. And she was very competitive, no ties for her. But I think everything was supposed to end in a tie. And she was like, that's not what I'm telling the kids, because that's not what happened. But she was just such a big influence. And I think, I saw that from a young age, which was so powerful for me. And then, I have similar feelings to Nadine about Katie Stone, who was my coach in college, another pioneer in women's hockey. Such a great coach, really struck a balance between, being hard on us and being a really good coach and, holding us to really high standards, but also, we felt like she really cared about us. And I certainly appreciated that. that's why I'm here right now. I want to do for others what she did for me. But I think even just in this conversation, Nadine and Maura both, I probably speak for all of us, they inspire me today, like to see them, what they've done in our league. I think there's a budding rivalry between our two teams too, which is really fun. But they took their teams to NCAA tournaments, both in their first couple years. So it's not just that they got jobs, but that they're at highly successful programs and continue to have success. So that inspires me now.
Yeah, agreed. They inspire me all the time. And I think you just hit it right on the head. It's not that they have the job, it's what they're doing with the job. And that's leads us as a great segue into kind of my next question for Maura and Nadine. The only two female head coaches in our league, in still a bit of a minority nationally in terms of female head coaches in our sport. How proud are you to be in the role, and how important is it for you to be in the role, and what are your aspirations in that space? Maura, let me start with you.
Yeah, very much the minority, I would say. I think it's a quarter of women's hockey coaches are female and 2 out of 7 in our league. So lots of work to do there. So very proud to be in the role, but I want to be sure that people understand, like, I worked really hard to get to this point. I've been in coaching since 2002. So out of graduation from college, didn't know what I wanted to do, wound up going back to my prep school. I was an assistant coach there for a year, head coach of the JV team, just figuring things out, got into college coaching that very next year, made $7,000. And that was it. Free education as well. I should throw that in there, with some free food and free housing, but that was it for 2 years. So I think you have to be willing to put in the work. And then I got a head coaching job at the D3 level, did that for 5 years. And then I was fortunate to get the job at Harvard and onto UMD. But I think it's a lot of work. It's a lot of passion. I do feel like what Nadine said, where females do feel like we have to work sometimes harder than our male counterparts to get to where we are. So I'm proud of that. And I want to open more doors for women. That's, probably leading into another question that you're going to ask down the line about having females on the staff. But I think it's incredibly important what everybody has talked about. It's seeing it and being it. And that's a tagline that's come out in the past 5 years or so. But for those of us doing it before then, it's a grind. And I think understanding that you have to work to get to where you want to go. And if you do that and you network and you talk to people and you surround yourself with really good, talented people, you can get there. So where I want to go, I want to win a lot of games at UMD, and that's my focus right now.
Nadine, your thoughts on that? I know it's, you've had good success as a head coach, and I know in knowing you that you're proud of being in this role, but, curious about how you view it, big picture, and how important you think it is to have not just coaches in women's hockey, but head coaches.
Right. So like I was saying earlier, at first, I didn't think I'd be able to handle this job. It was my mom, as well as Laura was talking about with her mom, my mom and my husband pushing me. I felt like at Minnesota, it was such an honor to coach your alma mater, to be coaching with Brad and Joel, who coached me as well. And I just felt like I kind of had hit a ceiling being in the role as a second assistant. I think I was very fortunate to have Diana, who was hiring. Here's another woman in power. She's the deputy athletic director at the Ohio State. She oversees football, and then us. And so I think, you know, when you have women who are hiring, it helps. I think it has them be a little more comfortable hiring women. Sometimes with men in positions, that there's a lot of athletic directors that are men, they might not understand women as as easily as another woman who's going to be hiring. So I was very fortunate to have Diana give me a chance, because at the end of the day, she was gambling. I was a second assistant. She liked the fact that I had a lot of ties to the WCHA. But like we had said before, we worked hard, very similarly to Maura. And I believe Maura and I played against each other in prep school back in the day. And so really throwing back now. And so I went back, not to my alma mater though. They actually didn't hire me. So I went back to Northfield Mount Hermon, a school in Western Mass. And yeah, you had to grind it out. You're making nothing, like $23,000, $24,000, and you're, you know, a dorm parent, you're an advisor, you're a teacher, you've got like 3 sports. I was the head hockey coach, soccer and track. I mean, they get a lot out of you, you know, but like Maura said, you don't have to pay for anything. But it's funny because sometimes these young kids have a false sense of reality of what the world is like, and they want to get out and they want to make money fast, and they don't realize it is a process, it is a grind, it's going to take time. Mm-hmm. So it's very important to create your name and your image now, because it will follow you forever. And so my aspirations come from, you know, just loving the game, you know, and being able to, I mean, hockey is a small component of what your job really entails. And the big thing is gaining the trust and the respect of your players, so they want to play for you. And I really, really love that I have built relationships with these young women and being their role model, like we have said with Halderson and Stone, and being able to pay it forward and push it forward for like the Hickles and the Bricklicks of the world. And so I think, you know, again, a big driving force for me, again, as I said, is my daughter. I just think of the opportunities that Maura and all these other fine women on this call can create for when my daughter goes to college in 15 years and what that will look like. And I want to know who's taking care of my baby girl when she goes to college. And if it's anybody that's on this call, I'm going to feel like she's in good hands. So there are a lot of opportunities with the women that I've coached over the years that can pursue that.
So that was a good segue for Ashley and Zoe. They're going to answer my next question. As you made this decision to get into coaching, how important was it that you were signing on to be a part of a staff led by a woman? Did that factor into your decision? And, you know, if so, how? Zoe, let's start with you.
I think that is a good segue, because Muz definitely early in some of our conversations, she took a lot of pride in and even being vulnerable with that and saying, like, I didn't know if I was ready for this position as a head coach. And I really want to inspire you guys as women to be able to do this someday too. So I think it's huge. I think I love working with with these guys every day, and it's fun to come to work every single day. So, and I get to learn a lot with them, and I learn a lot from the girls, and it is definitely important to take pride in getting to know each other. And I think that's something we do well as women too. And this year has actually been kind of a blessing in that way, because I think typically it'd be recruiting a lot more and got to know the staff and the players a lot, but definitely learned a lot from Muz and being inspired to do the things that she's done too in the future, and to be confident to do that as a head coach, you know, someone in our shoes. So I think it's great.
Ashley, how about for you? You graduated, you left for a year, went and played in China, I think that's correct, and then back to UMD. So walk me through that decision process. How important was it that you were going to be working with, you know, women coaches?
Yeah, that played a big role into my decision to come back and coach here at UMD. I think it goes back to, just like these guys are saying, my mom growing up, she definitely had a big impact on me as an individual growing up, and who I am today and what I value. And she was heavy on that, you know, being led by a woman, being a strong, independent woman myself. She's definitely taught me a lot. So fast forward to, you know, taking my first job post college, that was definitely a big factor. And you know, I had played for Maura and Lou for 2 years at UMD. So I already had experience with them as their player and knew what they were all about. And you know, when we started talking and I was going to apply for the job, that was a big part of my decision to come back. And, you know, looking back to 3 years ago now, I guess it was, the biggest thing too with Maura and Lou is just the development side. I knew coming in as a young coach, I get to work with females who respected and wanted to work with another young female and throw me into positions that was going to push me as a young coach. And now looking back, I've been in it for 3 years. I've been thrown into those positions, and I don't think all head coaches would do that with a young coach right off the hop. So that's definitely a big part as to why I chose to come back, so that I would be pushed as an individual, as a coach as well. And now looking back, I can say it's true, and I have been pushed, and I'm very appreciative for everything they've given me so far.
And I think I owe you a thank you, Brick, because it was you, as I don't know if you are aware, Jen, that they were teammates at Duluth, and it was Brick that told Zoe to apply to OSU because there was a job opening. So thanks, Brick.
It's amazing how small the world is, right? When we really dig into it, specifically within our sport. I mean, I think we can all agree that women within college hockey is a small subset of a population. And so if we're not looking out for each other, then I'm not sure who is. So that's definitely you can look at it as a duty or a responsibility. It's also an incredible privilege that we have the opportunity to build and grow. And, you know, similar, Maura, to your point, and Emily, my next question is for you, but I just finished a call where I'm same screen full of people and they were all men. And so the boundaries that and the ceilings that we have to continue to break as women, regardless of our role, they still exist. So I think we're all, you know, locking arms and leaning in together to say we can do this, but we need each other to do it. So that's by this, you know, all of these conversations just really, for me personally, help reinforce the good that comes from women working together and the opportunities that we have in our sport. Emily, you mentioned that, you know, you came from USA Hockey, only woman on the staff. So your perspective is unique on this. And I'm guessing we're going to share some similar thoughts, but the narrative around women in sports, right? So there's this, you know, whether it's coaching, training, sports media, whatever, there is definitely a different narrative for women. We are maybe held to a different standard at times. Sometimes there's a bias. I mean, there's all of those different things. And I know from our last panel, there was a lot of conversation about this need to continue to prove ourselves, right? Like we get to the table and we have to be at the table a lot longer sometimes than the men to be able to feel like we deserve to be there, or for others to feel like we deserve to be there. So just some thoughts from you on maybe some of the challenges you faced, you know, getting to this position and how you navigated maybe that all male kind of world for a while, and maybe thoughts about how to change it. I know it's a big question, so we'll just start and kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I think first and foremost, I was grateful. Those men that I was surrounded with had years and years of coaching experience. Bob Mancini, Roger Grillo, Scott Pollock. And for me, I think every situation you have to find positives. And I learned so much. And there were challenges for sure, but I think the respect was there. And I think every female on this call that, you know, they know the game, they know hockey, they've been in it, and that shows as well. I think in sports as well as media and other things like that. And I think all of these women earned respect that are on this call from different male counterparts as well as female counterparts. And so just to be courageous and strong and confident. And sometimes I know that's challenging in the world we live in right now, especially for our younger females, but, you know, be confident in what you know and your knowledge. And that's something that those guys were very supportive of. And so I did learn a lot. And transitioning into an all-female staff, there are definitely great positives with that. And I'm continuing to learn from these guys and Maura as well. We did some USA Hockey stuff together, and just seeing those women in coaches roles was something I never had, to be honest with you, growing up. And Laura Halderson had recruited me right before Brad Frost took over, and that was going to be my first female coach. And so personally, I thought it was a really cool thing. I was excited about it, and to continue to see these women build and grow their programs, as well as these young females, for me, I just think it's an awesome opportunity for all of us, but I think even more of an opportunity for our young female athletes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, I think I would be remiss if we didn't recognize that there's a lot of amazing men supporting women in our business as well, right? I mean, I think sometimes that gets
Yes.
lost, and there's this narrative of it's sort of the women versus the men. And I personally don't find that, at least in our league. I think that the men coaches in our league are phenomenal, and they're phenomenal at building and showing women how to be strong, independent women and leaders. And they deserve that shout out as well. Laura, how about for you? You know, you've been around women a lot, and you've been able to see women in coaching a lot. And so how do you navigate with your student athletes, you know, maybe the questions they have about the bias toward women, or why that exists? And what do you think, you know, what do you think the opportunities are for us to keep changing that narrative?
Yeah, I guess what comes to mind first in changing the narrative is just continuing to do what we're all doing every single day. You know, it's putting in the work. And I think, you know, as I said before, it's not just taking these roles, but then being successful in them. I think both of these programs have shown that, you know, they belong where they are for a reason. And so a lot of it, what comes to mind, and I guess this is back to what our head coaches have said, is just like, it's a lot of work. It's putting our heads down and putting that work in. I also think, you know, supporting each other and supporting other women, you know, the fact that Brick was part of Zoe applying to OSU is like, I love that. It's great, but it's also like really important. You know, we just had a series here in Duluth against these guys that was, you know, a tough series, 3 goals scored in 2 games, a 1-0 game, a 2-0 game. So really tight series, and we're very competitive. But once we're away from the rink, I think in order to change this narrative and to you know, make sure that women are still getting jobs and having success within them, it takes what happened this summer, which is just behind the scenes, we can still support each other. So I love that story. It's inspiring.
It is inspiring. So we're going to kind of get to this last question, which I'm going to have all of you answer. So sorry for whoever has to go last, because your answers might be taken, but we'll see how it goes. And maybe you can take it in different ways. I guess the thought that I have around, you know, what's the one thing we can keep doing? What's the best path for us as women, and for Maura and myself and Nadine, who may be at a leadership position where we might be able to affect some change, and for Ashley and Emily and Zoe and Laura, who are in the day-to-day with your student athletes and showing them this role model and this opportunity. What can we do? What's the focus on making sure that women know there's opportunity, women know they can do it, and, you know, what's a game plan maybe we can take to move forward? And I know we might be circling back on some of the things that we've already said, but, you know, how do we leave the conversation in a place of, we're spending this time celebrating girls and women in sport? So what's our path forward? How do we keep this thing moving? Nadine, let me start with you.
Well, first of all, just to circle back a little bit on the previous question, was in my 5 years here, I've had a male on staff every year on the bench. And really what it just comes down to is who's the best. You know, I don't look at male or female, like who's the best, who's the most experienced, who's going to fit in with our culture. And this year it happens to be that I have 3 women on the bench. And then of course we still have James Wisniewski as our volunteer coach. And so I think for women, for me in particular, like I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and I'm a coach. And I think the more that my players see that with me, not just like I'm only coach and this is what I do every day, and that they see that I'm also human and I'm a mom, and like they see my kids, like, you know, like pulling on me or, you know, talking back to me, like, you know, that I'm normal and I'm human, and that it doesn't turn off when I leave the rink, you know. And I think that's inspiring for these young women, because they can see you can have it all. You can be married, you can have kids, you can do it. It's a lot, and you have to make sure you have the right partner, but it can be done. And I think the more that they see those interactions, the more they see Duluth with the women coaches, and the more they see us with the women coaches, that it can be done. And I think, it's on head coaches and assistants too. Like, your job is just not about hockey, which we know. And it's those relationships that you have with your individual athletes and finding out what is best for them. Maybe it's not coaching, but if it is, how can we get them in more leadership positions as well, and not just like the coaching piece? And so I think it's just the every day to day, what they see from us and how we deliver.
Ashley, let's go to you. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Muzz. I think there's a lot to it. One thing that comes to mind is just the competitive side of it, and listening to Maura and Muzz talk about the hard work that goes in to get ourselves into these positions. And for them, blazing the trail for us younger coaches who are now stepping into these roles, that's important. So the work behind it, and again, getting back to, for us in our sport, like the competitive side of it, I think if we continue to push, work, grow as coaches, and push our game from a competitive standpoint, and, develop our players as people, but also on the ice, and grow our game that way, I think that just, helps to show that we are here, we belong. That's how it should be. But I think, a lot of times coaching traditionally is male dominant, right? So putting ourselves in these positions and working for it, putting a competitive product out on the ice, and proving ourselves a little bit too, right? Like, we're here, we know what we're doing. We've been in the sport for this long, and, we can take our sport and take it to the next level. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Emily, how about for you? Do your women student athletes ask you? Do you have conversations about maybe what's next, and how to encourage them? Obviously we've talked about it doesn't have to be in sport. I mean, maybe we would like them to stay in the sport in some capacity, but what do we do to keep them confident in themselves and being positive women as we move forward?
Absolutely. And I've commented on it a little bit earlier, and to piggyback what everyone else has said as well is, I think we live in a really tough world right now, especially for females, and standards that are set, and ideologies of how it should be. And I think that our young females, whether they're athletes or not, they're constantly seeing those things. And so for me, I guess there's a quote that I'll never forget, and it's people will always forget the awards and accomplishments you made, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And for me, I think a big one is just being a good example for these young females, whether it's going into coaching after, or going into business, finance, whatever it may be. I think being a good human is going a long ways these days. And I think that providing confidence to these young girls and to be a good example is something that stands out for me personally.
Well, I'm thankful that these young women have you, Emily, because I know you're making a difference. Zoe, how about for you? Newest coach to the mix. Do you feel like, you've learned a lot since you started just a few months ago, and what are your aspirations in this position, and as it relates to continuing to grow women in this sport?
Yeah, I say learning a lot, to say the least, and definitely in ways that I didn't even know I would be, like, for example, losing our director of ops and having to figure out those sort of things, but having a new appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes was nice. But yeah, I think just having a genuine love for the game and paying it forward that way is huge. And we get to share our experiences. All of us here have had all these different experiences that the game of hockey has given us. Like Brick, you and I got to go to China. Muzz, you went to Switzerland. We've been all over the world, and hockey gives you so many opportunities. And yeah, now we have career paths in this way too. So we've all been in their shoes, and then now we can directly relate to them and give them something to believe and give them something to look forward to.
Laura, I'm going to turn this one to you. I'm going to change the question though just a little bit. So we clearly know that this group is committed to our student athletes, right? To our women. And so how do we then encourage maybe outside of our league, right? So we've talked about this connection. We've talked about that. As we talk about bigger picture college women's hockey, is there anything that, you know, we can continue to do as a league or in our roles to push this forward and to continue the rise of women in our sport?
I had so much time to prepare for the last question.
Sorry.
No, I think, no, it's great. I think, you know, yeah, we're all saying a lot of the same things, and it's, I think part of it is our league leads. You know, I think we do that. We're the premier league in women's hockey, at least we like to say so. And I think we've shown that on the national stage. And so, you know, I mean, even just when it comes to head coaches in the NCAA, I think in men's sports, it's almost 100% head coaches are male. I think it's like 97 or 98%. In women's sports across the board, it's closer to 50-50. I think it's like 48-52, where you know, men are many of the head coaching jobs in women's hockey or in women's sports are going to men. So there's a long way to go. I think it's great that we're celebrating National Girls and Women in Sports Day, but there's a reason that there's not a National Boys and Men in Sports Day, or as far as I know, there's not. So it's a little bit of both. It's celebrating what we've done and how far we've come, but also realizing we've clearly got a ways to go if we're still celebrating this day. And I think just within our league, you know, one thing that comes to mind is even the officials. I think my first year in this league, there was maybe one woman who was an official. There were a few lineswomen, but we've seen progress even there. And it takes time, but that's another thing that, you know, we're reminded of is we're a lot younger than men's hockey. You know, even our alums, we'll talk with our men's staff about their alums, and they've got alums who are much, much older than our oldest alum. So I think that's a good reminder too. We're still a young sport, and there's a long way to go, but I think our league, between coaches, players, officials, your role as the commissioner, we're leading the way, and that makes me proud of our league.
Me too. Maura, let's end this. Last question for you. What's the one piece of advice that you would give? I'm totally throwing you a curveball, but I know you can handle it. What's the one piece of advice that you would give to a young woman who's, you know, considering stepping into this business, into being in sport, being in coaching? What would you share with her that you think would be beneficial as she gets started?
Yep,
yeah.
I was ready for the last one. I mean,
my phone call when I first was thinking about getting into coaching. You were my first phone call.
Yeah, well, remind me, how did that go? It was a long time ago. I'm getting older.
It was like, well, so I was just graduating, and I wanted to coach at Harvard in the year that Coach Stone was leaving for the Olympics, and Maura was taking over the program. And so your first comment was, you'll have to talk to Coach. But yeah, I'll let you answer the question, but you definitely gave me the much needed push and have along the way, just like, go for it. Like, there's no reason not to, but that's a little bit of a reminder of it.
Yeah, I feel like I've had a lot of those conversations, and I think people are eager, and that's a good thing, because obviously if they want to get into coaching, it's because they've had a good experience. Well, I shouldn't say that's obvious, because that's not always the case, but for the most part, they've enjoyed their experience and they want to make an impact. I think that's a great start. You have to have a passion for the game. You have to love being at the rink every day. I think it's such a privilege. Our jobs are so cool. We're doing a million things every day. Every day is different. But I wake up every single day absolutely motivated to do awesome things. So there's that, and it's really fun. But I go back to what I started with, and the reason I am where I am is, like, you have to work. It is not just showing up at practice and getting out there and doing drills with the players. And I think that's something that young recent grads sometimes think that's what coaching is, because they don't know what we're doing down here all day. Half the time it's like, oh, you're still here? Yeah, we're here all day long, whether it's recruiting, meeting, breaking down film, planning for the next day, whatever it might be. It's a lot of work, and it's not all on the ice. And for me, being an assistant coach is at this level is like all about recruiting. You have to love it. You got to love to get on the phones. You have to love to be in the rinks all hours of the day. I want the coaches that want to be there first in the morning with the coffee at the glass and all the way till the end. But they should have some fun while they're doing it too. You know, you work hard, you play hard. I think that's a great way to go about it. But those are some bits and pieces of advice. It's different than just showing up and skating with the girls. There's a lot of work to it, and you have to work.
You know, what's so interesting is the theme that generated from our last panel, which I think you'll all appreciate, and we sort of tagged it in this phrase. It's hard, it's real, but it's worth it. And that was sort of where they all landed. And everybody, you know, all of you even come from such different perspectives on, you know, how you got into the role, maybe your why and why you're still in it is different. And, you know, Nadine, you and I have talked a lot about our daughters and our hopes for them as they get to grow up and see all of these opportunities and be around, you know, the women. And I'm so jealous that one of the things that I miss that this year is being able to bring my kids to the rink with me and see your women and just feel that energy and remember, like, you can do this if that's what you want to do, you know. And I'm so appreciative of this group, you know, when we sort of bookend what this WCHA National Girls and Women's in Sports Week looks like. We're celebrating 12 female coaches in our league, 7 teams, 12 female coaches. I mean, when you really say that, 2 all-female staffs, a female assistant or a female on the bench at every one of our programs, I mean, that's something to be proud of. And if we're not celebrating that, then I'm not sure who is, right? And that's the other piece that we haven't talked about, but this ability as women sometimes to remember to toot your own horn. It's okay to celebrate all the good that we're doing, and people may not be paying attention, so let's make them pay attention. And so I'm so thankful and grateful for your time and your message. And I know that your female student athletes are proud every day to walk into a rink to be led by women like you. And I hope that this is inspiring for some to know that it's hard, it's real, and it's worth it. And that's why we continue to keep doing it. So appreciate your time today, and just thank you for being a part of our league and everything that we're doing.